FTA, man. He's going to make a trade agreement with every country in the world. By the end of next year, mark my words, he's going to have 95% of the world stitched up into an agreement with India. Mr. Piyush Goyal, thank you so much for coming to the Raisina Dialogue. And of course, the conversation picks itself. You have been setting a blitz, it's like a trade blitz across the world. You've been everywhere. What's driving this huge momentum over the past few years?
Thank you, Samir. First of all, congratulations to Raisina Dialogue. What you have created is truly remarkable, and we are very proud that today we have an international scale event year on year where we attract the brightest minds from all over, engaging with our youth and sending a strong signal, a strong message to the world. It is efforts such as this which have made India today respected by the world, which has helped us earn the confidence as a trusted partner. Our own effort at reforming the Indian economy, strengthening the macroeconomic fundamentals, creating an ecosystem in India conducive to business, and the confidence that has developed in India over the last decade. The self-confidence that we can engage with the world from a position of strength. The fact that we can protect our sensitive interests, yet have a serious interest in expanding markets for our farmers, for our fishermen, for our MSMEs and entrepreneurs. This self-confidence that has come in the nation, the fact that we can compete with the rest of the world, the fact that we are unapologetic about our ability to integrate in global value chains, the fact that India continues to be a fast-growing major economy, the fastest growing in the world now for 4 years in a row, and the fact that we have a decisive leadership which on the back of our young men and women, the demographic dividend which we often talk about, can provide to the world high quality goods, high quality services at competitive prices, is encouraging more and more countries to look towards India, a democracy where the rule of law prevails, where there'll be justice, where there'll be fair play, where you will not find anybody trying to interfere in domestic markets through predatory pricing or unfair trade practices. I think that trust that we have earned of the world is what is driving
many of these agreements.
Interest on the other side. We, of course, are very clear that no country in the world has become a developed nation without integrating or doing business globally. And therefore, you will find that the 9 free trade agreements that we have finalized in the Modi government are all with prosperous countries. They're all with countries far more developed than India, so that they don't become a threat to India. They actually complement India. And it is this complementarity that we have been able to leverage, I think, smartly.
You mentioned the decisive leadership, and you refer to the Prime Minister. And maybe this is not something I should ask you, and maybe you can't respond to me. But I want to ask you, what is the mandate that your boss gives you? Like, Piyush, go and get this signed.
No, why can you not ask me that question, or why should I be hesitant to answer that? Because this is a journey in which your boss gives you complete empowerment. Your boss trusts you. Your boss knows that you will work as a team with a whole of the government approach. You'll protect India's interests at every point of time, and you'll get them a good deal. So I think having a boss who trusts your capabilities or your ability to look after national interests is all that it takes to encourage you to go out there and get it done.
No, I was thinking about this recently that, as a trade minister, you have to negotiate with external actors, and you have to, of course, with the counterparts in other parts of the world who obviously are also serving their own national priorities. But you also have to take everyone in India along, the states, the SMEs, the different segments of society. And there is a domestic negotiation also involved. And that was sometimes difficult in India in the past. So I just want to understand, what is the Piyush Goyal mantra of creating consensus at home as well?
Samir, that's a good question. In fact, my journey as a commerce minister started exactly on this same note. I took charge of the commerce ministry on 1st June 2019. And some of you may recall that the previous government, around 2012 or so, had thrown India into negotiating on the negotiating table with the RCEP nations. That's the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership that originally India was not a part of. Actually, it was an agreement between China, the 10-nation ASEAN bloc, Japan, Korea, Australia, and New Zealand. India was not a part of it. I don't know for what joy and under what pressure and for what reason the then UPA government, that's the Congress and the DMK and the Trinamool Congress and the Samajwadi Party, that coalition of parties, what was it that prompted them to put India under the bus, and I say this with full responsibility, to become a part of RCEP? When I took charge in 19, several rounds of negotiations had happened over the years, and I started thinking to myself that even in 2012, India already had a free trade agreement with the ASEAN bloc. We already had a free trade agreement with Japan and Korea. We were in active negotiations with Australia, almost on the verge of concluding a deal with Australia at that point of time, which then they aborted in 2013. For what joy, I don't know, because that said now RCEP will continue. And New Zealand at that point, our bilateral trade was only $300 million. So really, when we talk of RCEP, it was a free trade deal between China and India. And I don't know if anybody in this room believes that would have been good for jobs in India, for economic activity in India, for fair play in India. It would have been disastrous. So when I took charge, I started meeting stakeholders. And you won't believe it, Samirji, what I found. That in the earlier trade deals, Japan, Korea, ASEAN, the few that was done before the Modi government came in, the Congress party and their ilk had barely consulted Indian industry. There was barely any consultations. Decisions were made in Delhi by the government without involving all stakeholders. I did 200 meetings, ladies and gentlemen, between June and October, across the length and breadth of the country. And you won't believe it, only 3 engagements. And these meetings were either with chambers of commerce or with sectoral interests. So I'm meeting the steel industry, I'm meeting the agriculturists in another place. Only 3 sets of people out of 200 said that we should join RCEP. And it was a clear signal. The stakeholders clearly spoke their mind and gave us the direction as government that this deal is not good for India. We don't want it. And it took courage of conviction, which our Prime Minister has in abundance, that he stood on 4th November 2019 in Bangkok before world leaders and said, the RCEP is not good for my country. I refuse to be a part of RCEP. And we didn't enter into that so-called free trade agreement with China. So for us, stakeholder response, stakeholder consultation and feedback is extremely important in every FTA that we do. The amount of consultation between line ministries and the commerce ministry, between line ministries and their respective stakeholders, commerce separately talking to stakeholders is an elaborate process. And we have now probably 30 conference rooms in Vanijya Bhavan, the commerce office. At points of time, we are negotiating with 3 or 4 sets of countries. And in the other rooms, we are doing stakeholder consultations which feed into the negotiations. It's like a whirlwind over the last 2 or 3 years. And friends, I can assure you, these 9 free trade agreements, I can say it on record with all the courage that I have on my command, with all the responsibility that I hold as Commerce Minister, not a single trade deal, in not a single trade deal has India compromised on any sensitivity of any of our stakeholders. And in all of the trade deals, we have protected national interests. We have opened the doors to greater engagement. We have kept in mind sensitivities as well as a realistic approach that ultimately a trade deal has to be good for both parties. You can't deal, you can't
find the sweet spot.
Yeah, it can't be that everything I want you open in your market, but I will open nothing in my market. In fact, my approach is that ultimate stakeholder in any negotiation is the consumer of India. We have 1.4 billion consumers. They also have a say. Very often my daughter tells my wife, Papa also has a say in the family. It's somewhat like that. The stakeholder, as consumers, as stakeholder also have a say. I mean, after all, if Maruti hadn't come into India along with Suzuki, would you all be happy if India only had ambassadors and Fiats, Premier Padminis at that point of time? Fiat had also gone away by then. Or for that matter, if now in an economy which is growing, prosperity levels are growing, where we have higher incomes, where we have more consumer choice, aren't we better off having Hyundai manufacturing in India and Kia manufacturing in India and Suzuki and Toyota and Mercedes-Benz and Skoda, with all of them coming to India? I think as consumers we have choice. That keeps inflation down. That gives you high quality, high efficiency, which provides jobs to our youngsters. Millions and millions of people are engaged only in the automobile sector. And going forward also, this industry, this demand for this industry is growing at 8% every year at an aggregate, 8% compounding. So you can imagine how much more scope we have to create jobs. Now, if you will look, and I urge some of you to do a research, you'll find some very interesting statistics. Auto sector, because we have opened it to competition and allowed more companies to come in, and initially they may even export the product to test market. Once they export and they find the sweet spot of what sells in India, ultimately they will have to manufacture in India. Which European car at $50,000 per capita, in Germany probably even more, can compete in the Indian market producing at those high costs? But if initially they can sell, say, 5,000 cars or 10,000 cars, test the market, find there is traction, there is demand, and then come and manufacture here, we are better off for it. And they are better off for it also. So our approach is add to the competition in areas which are high-tech, in areas where we can benefit as a nation, create more jobs as a nation, bring innovation to India, produce at scale in India, not only for the Indian market, which is big, but from India, help them sell to Africa, help them sell to Latin America, help them sell in Asia. And therefore our approach has been create a worldwide web of trade partnerships so that we are a part of many global value chains seamlessly, goods moving in and out of the country, and all of this ultimately creating huge amount of jobs directly and indirectly. And that is the larger approach which has helped us do all these partnerships.
And now you, of course, have the GCC and Canada and a few others already on the way. But let me ask you, sir, the organizing priorities for any particular agreements that you move towards. Is it what you seek in terms of sectors, or is it the size of the market that attracts you?
Very interesting question, Samirji, and I think friends who are participating in Raisina Dialogue will be happy to know. In every agreement, we have tried to bring balance, often with non-trade issues. Let me give you a sense of how we negotiate. I was doing the free trade agreement with the four-nation EFTA bloc. That's Switzerland, Norway, Liechtenstein, and Iceland. Now, I talked to them and I said, look, guys, already most of the products that you import are duty-free in your country. What you are importing. Your people are already satiated. They have good clothes, they have good cars, they have good homes. They have all the basic needs of life. So what is opening up for me? What do I gain by opening my market or giving you access in my market? What is my corresponding gain in your country? It's minuscule. Of course, the threat is also minuscule.
Correct.
There's no threat also that they can dump any goods here because they are so expensive. And
Yeah,
$100,000 per capita income in Switzerland, today probably $104,000 or $105,000, or $200,000 in Liechtenstein with a 40,000 population. They are no threat to India. But what do I get in return? Also, 25 years from now or 22 years from now, India will be a $30 trillion economy. At the growth rate, scorching pace of growth that our hardworking Indians are working on. Now, I'm giving you a delta of opportunity of an economy which grows from 4 trillion
To 30.
to 30 trillion. That's a $26 trillion
Additionality.
additional delta of opportunity.
Correct.
You add any growth rates in your country, whatever you like to add, all four nations put together. Of course, their growth rate is hardly big. And then I look at IMF numbers and all. I said, 25 years from now, you barely cross $5 or $6 trillion. The delta of opportunity that you give me is so small that you'll have to add some other factor to balance out the deal and make it good for me. So now we have an agreement with these four-nation EFTA countries where they will invest $100 billion, $100 billion, foreign direct investment. It's not as if the Norwegian pension fund,
Correct.
Norges fund, can put $100 billion into the Indian stock market and say our commitment is done.
I think he would have met you. He is also here. One of
No,
the
I haven't met him.
Okay.
Now I met him in Norway, but that's not a part of this deal. They can invest a few $100 billion, it'll be good for them. But this deal entails a commitment of $100 billion that these four countries have to invest in India in a defined time frame. And this is only foreign direct investment, that is long-term money, which we need. It has to create a minimum of 1 million direct jobs. And I think a $100 billion investment in FDI, when you take the Indian partners investment, take bank credit, take the ecosystem that develops around it, will seed a $500 billion investment. It'll at least encourage a $500 billion investment, creating maybe
Huge economic
5 million
benefits.
jobs in India.
Correct.
Now, that helped us to bring balance to the agreement.
So you
Same
opened
thing
up the
happened with
market,
New
and
Zealand.
you opened up the market, and they are investing into your country.
And by the way, if they don't invest, I can claw back the benefits that I've given them in the free trade agreement. So same thing happened with New Zealand. They also don't have much of a market, small economy. In the last 25 years, New Zealand has only invested $70 million. Please be clear, it's $70 million is their FDI in India in 25 years.
Okay.
In the next 15 years, they have committed to invest. It's a legally binding commitment. $20 billion. That's about 300 times
more than what they've done in the last
in the
25
last
years.
25
Wonderful.
years. But that's a part of the agreement to bring balance. UK, I said you're 4 trillion, I'm 4 trillion. I'll be 30 trillion, you may barely reach 8 trillion. So what do I gain? Half your products are already duty free. So my gains are in only half your products. Your average rates are much less than mine. So what did we get in return? Our young men and women who go and provide services in UK, they were required to pay social security, 25%. And that money would go waste because these kids usually go for 2 years, 3 years. Infosys may get a contract, they may work for 3 years and come back. Somebody may go as a chef, work for 3 years and come back. Now that money goes waste because unless you work 10 years, you don't get social security in UK. So now if you go for 3 years, that social security money which you used to pay there, you can pay into your provident fund account in India.
Wonderful.
It'll be your savings and it'll be the money of the Indian who's put his sweat and blood and toil to serve the UK economy. That'll not get wasted, it'll come to his savings account. So with every country, we are trying to balance agreements. If they are smaller than us, of course, if they are much, much bigger than us.
And I'm going to come to some bigger ones. Huh? I'm just coming to that one. I was prepping you up for some of those big ones. Look, we've been having conversations on the changing world and obviously the changing role of the US, the changing posture of the US. There is a little bit of a despondency. There is some disappointment. There is some anger. There is some negativity. But you seem to be now on the path where there seems to be an end in sight, right? You seem to now be heading towards some new normal with the United States in terms of the trading and economic relationship. How has that journey been?
Well, it's been a fantastic journey. We have the best of relations. You would have observed that through the last year, President Trump has always had the best of things to say about India as a country and about Prime Minister Modi and his friendship with Prime Minister Modi. We have fantastic relations with our counterparts there. Even within your family, sometimes you can have one or two misunderstandings. It's a part of life.
Par for the course.
Yeah, par for the course, absolutely. But I think it's a very, very powerful relationship that the US and India share. We are two strategic partners, two of the largest democracies in the world. We have a large responsibility cast on both our nations. They are the world's largest economy, $30 trillion economy. Nobody can wish them away.
No.
And ultimately, a trade deal is about preference over your competition.
Correct.
End of the day, what's a trade deal? You are trying to get a preference or a preferential access for yourself, your goods, your services, compared to your competitor. And we got the best deal amongst all the competing nations with whom we compete. I mean, whether it's in our neighborhood, Pakistan, Bangladesh, if you look at the ASEAN region, we got the best deal amongst all of the competitors with whom we have to compete. So I think the US-India relationship is strong. It's multi-dimensional. It's not only about trade. There's a huge technology overlay on it. There's a huge critical minerals partnership. There's a defense partnership. So for us, there's a huge amount of investments that flows into India from the United States. So it's a partnership of two countries, which is going to define
this century,
the future.
Yeah. And you also created a near miracle. In less than a year since starting, you signed the FTA with the EU. Right, the mother of all deals, as Ursula von der Leyen called it. But I would certainly say it's miraculous in getting the bureaucracy in Europe to move at that pace. And of course, I just want to know how did that happen?
Absolutely no miracle. It was just the confidence that both sides expressed in each other. I can share with you what I do normally when we start a negotiation. And it's very simple, and it's maybe good for some of the youngsters in the room in their own life when they have to do negotiations. It started with the Australian negotiation, the first or second free trade deal that we did in this government. After Mauritius, we did Australia. We were at the Oberoi Hotel. We didn't have the Vanijya Bhavan office At that point of time, we were still out of Udyog Bhavan, those old colonial offices, which we are now going to break down.
By the
and
way,
have-
I'm hearing very good things about your new office. Lots of people have been telling me that it's an excellent place to negotiate.
I thought you would say you're hearing good things about the hospitality that they
Also that. Actually, it's mainly about the hospitality, but the way the ambience and the
He's
venue
getting
is good.
politically correct now. No, but on a serious note, Prime Minister Modi understands that unless you work in a good atmosphere, you can't deliver good results. So that time we didn't have Vanijya Bhavan. It was under construction. We constructed it all through COVID, by the way. Prime Minister's leadership is 24 hours working, get things done irrespective. So we were at Oberoi Hotel and we were walking in for the delegation level talks, after which the press was waiting for us to announce the launch of free trade negotiations. I think it was September 21, possibly. September 21. And while walking, I saw a room, small room. And Dan Tehan, the then minister, I said, Dan, why don't we just have a cup of coffee before we go into the meeting? So we went into that room, just the two of us. We spent 4.5 hours together in that room. We finally had several cups of coffee. We had our lunch served there. High commissioners were pacing outside, very, very worried. The bureaucracy was aghast. You know, bureaucracy doesn't like to leave their ministers alone. They're very, very worried what will happen inside the room. And that's exactly what we did. We did something which was absolutely against the principles of negotiation that the world has been working on. Dan Tehan and I first agreed, I will respect your sensitivities, you respect my sensitivities. That was the first principle we agreed on. And we said, why fight over petty things? The world is not going to come to an end. Australia-India trade is not going to come to an end if I don't open dairy for you. And he was shocked because Australia had never done an agreement without dairy.
Correct.
I said, okay, if you want dairy, I have to choose. Either I have my job or I have an FTA. So we agreed, okay, let's try to look at the low-hanging fruit. And then we started discussing the broad contours of the deal, including the balance, which I told you. In Australia, we balanced with another very out-of-the-box idea. There was a double taxation between Australia and India, which was hurting our services export, particularly IT exports. They changed the law and removed that double tax so that we could, our IT would become, or our services would become more competitive and expand business. So we drew the contours in those 4 hours, came out, realized the press is waiting for far too long. And that's one set of people who should never keep waiting. And so we sat in the delegation talks only for the photo op and quickly moved to the press, announced launch of negotiations, and would have possibly finished it in 3 or 4 months. But for the fact that the wave of COVID hit India, soon after that. Then a wave of COVID hit Australia. And from 22nd September, when we launched the negotiations, until 31st December, we couldn't do much. All were at home.
Yeah.
So,
but I'm told even in New Zealand, you went to the...
Let me go 1 minute. It's just very interesting because I want the youngsters to hear this. On 31st December, I was watching television. As were most of us, we had nothing better to do those days. And I saw 1 million people at Sydney Harbour. So I picked up the phone and called Dan. I said, looks like COVID is over in Australia. And he said, I'm also seeing it on television. I realized it seems Australians have given up on the lockdown. So I said, let's get cracking. And we set up, it was probably 1 or 2 in the night in Australia. And it was probably 7 or 8 in the evening in India. We set up 5th of January to do a VC, to kickstart discussions. Our first meeting after 22nd September was on 5th January on a VC. And on 2nd April, ladies and gentlemen,
we signed the agreement.
We signed a legally binding agreement, the free trade agreement. Because we respected each other's sensitivities. There was not much that we were competitors on. We had stakeholder discussions, negotiations, conversations, literally 7, 8, 10 a day. I used to travel different parts of the country to understand from industry what they wanted in this, understand from fishermen, understand from farmers what was sensitive, what we could do, what we could not do. And I dare say the 9 trade agreements that the Modi government has done have all respected every sensitivity and are good for the country. And this is the style that has held us in good stead. Respect each other, look at low-hanging fruits, balance or create fair and equitable agreements which work for both sides, create a win-win situation, and you can never go wrong.
No, but there is also another attribute that has worked very well, and I know this as a secret. In New Zealand, everyone talks about your friendship with the minister, and you've also been to his home, which is some few hours away from Auckland, and he also has come here. I don't know how many times in the last year. So
he came 6 times. I was not able to travel much.
Personal Piyush Goyal.
So he said, "I will not do the deal until you come once to Australia." By the way, New Zealand. And by the way, New Zealand Airways is run by an Indian.
Correct, Nikhil.
So in fact, he took us to Rotorua, his hometown, and then he even took me to the top of a volcano. And that's where we shook hands and decided that we should go ahead and announce the free trade agreement. Same way, the UK agreement, we shook hands, and the last couple of issues which were a problem was settled at Hyde Park. Taking a walk around Hyde Park, we started with a ice cream which the UK minister bought me, I think at Serpentine or Lido. Which one is at the end, just when you start the walk?
I haven't been to Hyde Park forever now.
Okay. So yeah, he bought me an ice cream. We started walking from there, my usual route which I take. We ended at, we started at Lido, we ended at Serpentine, where I bought him a coffee, and we shook hands and closed the deal. So these are fun elements. If we keep a good relation, you can always surmount difficulties. And that's how we've been able to.
I think this has been fascinating. I think you have given us such a wonderful insight and such a vivid insight on the life of a trade negotiator. And I think trade is perhaps the single most important aspect of 21st century living. All of us are in some ways hearing about it all the time.
Now with 2/3 of the world trade open to business for India, with preferential access for Indian business, each one of you, I would urge you, look at internationalizing your businesses. Go international, go and capture world markets. Get best of technologies, get innovative technologies, because the developed world needs young talent, young skill, which is in abundance in India. And I believe, I'm told, Mr. Chandrababu Naidu also talked extensively about that. All of these technologies
is actually increasing the young people in India.
We will need this. Demographic dividend is our strength. And we will need all of you, talent, skill that you bring on the table to leverage all these free trade agreements. The world is ours to capture. Go for it, and we are a developed, prosperous country, a Viksit Bharat in 2047.
So please join me in applauding the wonderful minister. Thank you so much, sir. Can I request you for the photograph?
Some fantastic storytelling there on how to negotiate a trade deal. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us once again at Raisina Dialogue. Always a pleasure to host you. Thank you so much. We will now take a very short break. I would request my colleague, I would just request the audience not to cross the ropes and join us on stage. We'll take a short break and we'll come back into the room.